Camping with the far right. What I learned from a year inside Patriotic Alternative. So basically, there was a mole. Now, this is just whenever you're any kind of right wing group, you're going to have feds. You're going to have feds in there. That's just the way it works. Not so much if you're a mosque or anything like that. Those guys get left alone. You know, the guys that do the really serious terrorist attacks. But if you're any kind of right wing group, they have to deal with it in America. You have to deal with it over here. You're going to have one or two feds in there. For the past year, I've been posing as Dan Jones, a member of the far-right group Patriotic Alternative. I've attended protests, a summer camp filled with families, a secretive conference, and when I told them I was sofa surfing, the group even found me a job. This sounds fun, and it sounds like they helped you. It sounds like you were a man that was a bit down in his luck, and this group actually helped you and tried to lift you up. What awful, terrible people. What I heard while undercover was talk of race wars, threats of violence against migrants, and people planning to arm themselves. The evidence I secretly filmed has led to calls for a police investigation and separate calls to change the law to ban the group, because there's certain opinions that you're just not allowed to have. You're not allowed to have any naughty, naughty opinions. Ones that go against the government and the things that basically the fact that we've been replaced. This article contains graphic accounts of racist and violent language. You've already sold me on it. But I had been following members of PA online for months before joining the group. PA's organiser in Wales, Joe Marsh, was a veteran member of the far right who had had many previous guises, including the British National Party and as a football hooligan. He was involved with protests outside a hotel in Llanelli, which had been set to house hundreds of asylum seekers because the locals didn't want them. I think if the locals say, we don't want this, then that's the fucking end of it. Yeah, I think people that live in an area should get to decide what happens in that area. But no, the government can apparently come in and go, best I can do is all your 13, 12-year-old daughters getting weird DMs on Facebook from a lot of brown men. Like, yeah, you can have that. You can have that. Fix the roads? Yeah, that's the best we can do. Isn't government wonderful? I wanted to meet him to find out what he would say in private to someone who wants to join PA. I chose a fake name, practiced my backstory that I was a sofa surfing delivery rider who'd been through a bad breakup, and sent my details to PA. It took less than 24 hours for Mr. Marsh to message me. He invited me to meet him for breakfast in Swansea ahead of a protest against drag queens. Guy's even reaching out to you to talk to you himself, man. Like, you told him you were going through some stuff and he wanted to talk to you. He was probably worried about you, man. Sounds like he was. He told me he invited anyone who wanted to join PA first to meet him on his own, joking, you don't know whether you'll end up on BBC Wales. My stomach dropped. After a few hours, it felt like I had passed a test. Before I left, he asked if I was following his social media accounts. Then the messages started. Some were direct to me, some to the groups which I was added. They were relentless day and night from Mr. Marsh and others in the group, and almost every single message was about race, because obviously that's the focus of the group. That's the focus of the group. What did you expect? I joined the bakery club and all the messages were about baking. That's like, what did you expect? Some were racist memes. The best kind. For example, a drawing of a policeman handing a note to someone at their door, and the note read, so we decided to let a Pakistani rape your daughter, here's why. Like, I think I've seen that one. And there was a constant stream of links to news stories about black and Asian people convicted of crimes. After a few weeks, I was invited to join PA members for a so-called banner drop. Members gathered for no more than an hour near a road to wave flags branded with PA logos and other messages. The messages on the banners was often fairly benign. They didn't want to attract the attention of police or counter-protesters, but the actual conversations I heard were very different. At my first banner drop, a former civil servant and PA member called Aaron Watkins asked me whether I could fight. He told me I should learn, saying it would be good for me to know I could kill a person. That's a bit of a LARP. That's a little bit. Self-defense, absolutely, especially if you're going to be in any kind of political activism, because Antifa are probably going to come in and try and fight with you and stuff like that. So self-defense, absolutely, but you need to know, do you know if you hit a guy here, it stops his heart? Like, no, that's LARP shit. Don't do that stuff. Don't do that. That's cringe. On another occasion, Roger Phillips, who wasn't a PA member but attended some of their protests, told me he was buying a pump-action shotgun, asking me who else is going to fight the migrants. LARP. LARP. Like, I'm sorry, it is like, I know a lot of guys that are in PA, right? I know a lot of them, right? And a lot of them are just normal. They're just concerned about their country. They want repatriation. They want British culture to come back. They want Indigenous rights. They want all of that stuff, right? And they know that they're safe around me, and I've never once heard them talk about violence. Yeah, we're going to gas them all. We're going to round them up, and we're going to shoot them. I've never once heard that. And like they talk, and they've said some shit around me because they know that they're safe around me, and I'm not going to snitch on them because I fucking hate cops, right? And also the things that they said were things they said, therefore free speech, right? I don't care, but I've never heard any of that. I've never heard any of that stuff. So it sounds like every group's got its little LARPing nutters, so it seems like these are the guys that this guy honed in on. About 9 months after joining PA, I was invited to attend the group's summer camp. I've heard of this summer camp before. I've never been invited. I've never been invited to the PA summer camp. I'm just saying. About 150 of us, including men, women, and children, descended on a campsite in Derbyshire for 3 days under the guise of being a hiking association. The group took over a big section of the campsite and decorated the area with regional flags. All the leaders of the organisation were there, such as founder Mark Collette and deputy Laura Towler. I actually haven't spoken to Mark in quite a wee while. Members came from all over Britain. Lots of people brought their children with them, and they were allowed to run around the campsite and play while the group discussed things such as the white replacement conspiracy and used racial slurs. We weren't the only ones on the campsite. There was a big scout group next to us who ended up moving because they said that the kids felt intimidated by PA. I'm not buying that. When that happened, the campsite owners threatened to throw Patriotic Alternative out. One morning, they went on a group hike, with almost everyone carrying PA flags. We reached the top of one mountain and stopped for a while before noticing a group of men of South Asian heritage behind us who happened to be hiking in the same direction. The hike culminated in unveiling two massive banners on the top of a local peak. One read, "We will not be replaced," and another read, "White Lives Matter." One of the last things I did was attend PA's special conference in October. It was a 3-day event, a lot like a political conference at a hall the group had hired under the guise of a 50th birthday party. A few hundred members turned up, and there were banners everywhere, as well as speakers from other countries. One speaker was Blair Cottrell from Australia, a man with a string of convictions. After his speech, I went to sit at the table he was at. He spoke about a black criminal in Australia. He said, "You can't reason with them, you have to use brute force." And as a deterrent, he then made a sickening suggestion: literally skin them and hang a few of their bodies up across some traffic lights. LARPing. This is as the LARP. Like, see that stupid tough man stuff? I know you're saying it to try and show how hardcore you are to like the other members, but it's cringe, and everyone's probably an undercover fed. So I know that you didn't actually mean that statement. However, that's not what a prosecutor's going to say. So stop saying stuff like that. Stop saying cringy stuff like that. He said he was speaking theoretically, but added, that is practically the most effective way to actually send them a message. Many of the PA members around him seemed full of admiration. I asked one, Patrick, a former history teacher, whether he bought into the idea of a race war. He said it was inevitable, and for those migrants who refuse to leave the country, the only way to get rid of them will be to kill every single one of them. If I can stop that. You don't actually mean that either. Well, you really think that if you get the gun put in your hand and you're standing there above them in the pit, that your morals aren't going to fucking take over? You're not going to have the Lord screaming in your ear? The fuck are you doing? Right? Like, stop the LARP. Stop the LARP, right? Advocating for repatriation and all that other stuff, fine. That's fine. That'll solve the problem. But just stop the I am the toughest guy in all of the far right. I say kill them all. Like, I'm from Derbyshire and I say kill them all, right? That stuff's a LARP. Stop doing that crap, right? It doesn't do anything. All you're trying to do is look cool to the rest of the group and show how hardcore you are. I'm the raitiest boy in this group, actually. Right, it's cringe. Stop that. And you've just said it to an undercover. Right, so all you've done is fuck over the group, and you've fucked over what you were trying to do in the first place. Just stop. Stop the cringy LARPing. Secret filming. An undercover operation wasn't without stress or issues, and being undercover for so long took its toll. I was always overthinking, always tense, and my phone was always pinging. Soon after joining, I started wearing a hidden camera. Once, while I was at a house in South Wales with Mr. Watkins, who had offered me a day's work helping with a decorating job because the guy was helping you out. I thought I was recording him until I went to the toilet and realised my camera wasn't working. I told him I needed to go outside to call my mum, but instead rang my producer for help. My BBC colleague scrambled to find a solution, eventually dropping a new camera into a nearby bush for me to find. As we walked, Mr. Watkins told me he believed migrants coming to the UK should be put into camps until they agreed to leave the country. He suggested those who refused should be shot. He also admitted to burning his old phone on a barbecue before anti-terrorism police could find it. It's because you're saying silly things like that. And basically, your job as a group is to win over the everyman. When you say stuff like that, that doesn't exactly win over the everyman. Right? I get that a lot of stuff like that is said in anger, frustration, all that type of stuff as well, but just, it doesn't help. It does not fucking help. Right? Just cut the LARP. Civil servants and NHS workers. At the end of the year, the moment came when our BBC team approached the PA members and revealed the evidence we had against them. We never told them there had been an undercover journalist, but within 30 minutes they worked out it was me. I was kicked out of the private messaging group I'd been added to, and my burner phone fell completely silent. That was that. Looking back, perhaps the biggest surprise was that many of PA members were not who I expected them to be. Many were well educated, how about that, including a former history teacher, civil servants and NHS workers. They were organised with leaders in charge of groups across every region of Britain and a centralised leader in Mark Collette. They've tried unsuccessfully to register a political party. Now their plan, according to leader Mark Collette, is to win people's trust by engaging in local activism. He said, because if you're working in a shitty 9-to-5 job worrying about money, then all of a sudden you're worrying about your daughter is going to get raped because there's 250 men of fighting age who've just turned up eyeing her up as she walks to school. I think that's a valid concern. I've got 2 young kids who are going to be going to school. Right, I think that's a very valid concern. I worry about that because the government doesn't give a shit. See that shit? The government does not fucking care. So if the government stops caring about such a serious issue, then the locals are going to take it into their own hands. And I've got a feeling that they're going to do a lot better of a job, but also a lot fucking rougher of a job. So if you don't want that to happen, then start actually fucking doing something about it. And then a group who comes in, gets it shut down, and removes that worry. That's a positive in people's lives. The group is also fundraising for convicted criminals like those jailed after the Southport riots. You know, the people that made those horrendous Facebook posts. Ooh, like those people, those political prisoners. Call them what they are, they're political prisoners. At least 3 members I spoke to had been referred to Prevent, but their views clearly hadn't changed. Now it's all over, I'm much more cautious than I used to be. I feel I have to be careful and more aware than before. Ultimately, the people I met at PA don't know my true identity, but they know what I look like. I know those guys, they'll have found you by now. A barrister who has written books on extremism has said some members I recorded could be investigated for inciting racial hatred, and there are calls for the law to change to ban groups like PA who might be spreading hate. Leader Mark Collette said they were not extremists, did not promote violence, and peacefully campaigned for the rights of what he called Indigenous British people. I don't have any regrets. It feels like whatever happens, PA members or others like them will continue to find ways to do what they do. That's why it's important to keep showing people who's behind the mask. Right. All that LARPing was silly and it's stupid and it serves no one. Your job is to win over the everyman. And if you start sitting there going like that, oh fucking Heil Hitler, let's load up the trains, the average person in the street is going to be fucking horrified because they don't want that. Right, they do definitely want solutions to these problems, but if you start doing the kill them all, like fucking stuff, you've immediately put everybody off and you've just held your ideology back. And also, you shouldn't be advocating for murder or violence against people unless they're inflicting violence against you. Right? Basically, your job is to win over the everyman. Doing that cringy LARPing stuff does not help and does not work. Right? I want this country to be a better place. I want my children to be able to go to school safely. I want them to go to dance classes safely without having to worry about them being stabbed over 100 times. I want this change. The average person in the street wants this change. And if you're portraying yourselves as the people that are going to bring about that change, then you have to present yourself in a way where you're acceptable to the everyman. Right, so see that stupid, cringy, I'm the most violent man, and like this is like that does not help. It does not help, right? I understand you're frustrated. I understand you're angry, and I understand when if you've been screaming at a brick wall for like the last 20 years, and the government and every single institution is saying "shut up, racist." Right? I get why that makes you angry, and it does get frustrating after a while. And sometimes you might have that little feeling, well, the only solution is things I'm not going to name. Right? I get that. However, do not do that, because the instant you engage in that shit, the ideology that you love so much, you've just set it back 10 years. Right? So, stop it. Just stop doing that. Like, there are certain goals that you have where I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed and I want you to do well. Right? And also, don't go around the group saying stuff like that, because the person that's actively trying to get you to say and do violent things, they're a fucking cop.